I know that there are 4 different installments to this project, but just the very first installment sort of paints a picture of what's to come. I mean, there's such an international flavor to all the pieces that you have on here. And I love how it brings out all the different aspects of the cello. I mean, the cello has always been one of my favorite instruments. I assume it's one of your favorite instruments.
Definitely.
For folks who don't know, I'm talking with cellist Inbal Segev. And the last time we spoke, we talked about the Anna Klein Concerto, a wonderful piece of music. And we talked about the fact that you are interested in new music, you commission new music, and you've really gone, the long haul with this project 20 for 2020. Maybe you could just start by telling us what the whole concept is. There are 4 different releases that are happening as part of this program.
Yeah, so when the pandemic struck, my husband and I thought of ways to sort of help the ecosystem going again, and also to keep myself happy and busy. So we've decided to commission 20 pieces from 20 living composers. And I approached my friends and sort of people I've admired for a long time that were obvious choices. And then little by little, I branched out to people I never heard of even. And I thought that to get most different voices to be heard and their kind of take on this year, not only regarding the pandemic, but also Black Lives Matter movement, and just having a more inclusive feel to it.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of the composers and their music, if you don't mind, on the first volume, which is already out. The second volume I know is coming out toward the end of this month, and you
Yes.
give us a little preview on that as well. But the first volume, you mentioned Black Lives Matter. My eye was caught by composer James Lee III, who spent his university career just a few miles north of us at University of Michigan, from Michigan originally. And I was struck by the fact that he wrote a piece of music with a Hebrew title to it. He's an African-American composer. And
Yes.
this was in response to all those events and the protests and the killings that went on over the summer. And you mentioned him as a kindred spirit in one interview that I listened to. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that relationship and how he came to write a piece that has Jewish themes or has, a Hebrew title to it for you.
Yeah, so James is a gentle soul, I like to say. From the few times we've talked, he's really very sweet, and I enjoyed talking to him. He speaks Hebrew, which is amazing. I come from Israel, obviously. He's a Seventh-day Adventist, so he rests on Shabbat, on Saturday, just like we do. And you can even hear at the end of the piece, after all the turmoil, he goes into 7 beats per measure, and that's symbolic of that kind of making peace with sort of the situation, perhaps, I don't know, or accepting, at least, not making peace with it. But and then he came recommended from Marin Alsop, who I've recorded the Anna Klein with, and I was delighted to meet him. He writes in a beautiful, very cellistic way. So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when Marin Alsop recommends somebody, I guess your ears perk up then.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
But
by the way,
beautiful.
talk about Michigan. My husband went to Michigan, so we recently took a trip to Ann Arbor. It was great. Yeah, we have a kid who's applying for colleges now. So
Wow.
We were not far from you.
Yeah, just about an hour's drive north of Toledo area. That's great. Well, you've got a lot of other stuff on here. I guess the first composer that you talked with about this was Bruce Wolosoff. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Tell us about your
yeah.
relationship with him and the music he created for you.
Bruce is a dear friend. I really love to talk to him. I even take some composition kind of advice from him. And he writes beautifully, very tonal, and I think this piece, La Crime, is extremely poignant. He
Yeah.
wears his heart on his sleeve there.
Lacrimae, sort of like a throwback to old school Renaissance. It means tears, but an elegiac piece of music, and very effective, I have to say. Um, when I first listened to the piece that Timo Andres wrote for you, it sounded like you guys were tuning up, and I ran to my keyboard and I was like, yeah, that's an A natural they're playing. You know, it's an open string for you normally, and it's, you know, what the orchestra tunes up on. And I was thinking, it sounds like they're tuning up, and then you guys take off, and then you kind of taper back again. Can you talk about your collaboration with him?
Yeah, Timo wrote me a concerto a few years ago, which we premiered at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and that was inspired by a piece of art there. And so this time, very different piece for obviously for cello and piano, and he really, I think, he explores the sound. Basically connection between cello and piano. So piano is a percussive instrument and cello is a lyrical instrument, and yet he really makes that seamless back and forth because the pianist is plucking inside the piano strings. We're doing all kinds of interesting techniques, pizzicato with nails, for example. Then there's quarter tones, polyrhythms. There's a lot going on. And it's a really rich, short little piece that he said one day maybe he'll make it into a full sonata. Yeah. I think it's a really great piece.
I guess you had to grow out one of your fingernails for those extended technique pizzicati. Is that right?
I did. I looked like a guitarist for a while. Yes.
Have you trimmed it since then, or are you still?
No, I did. I trimmed it. I don't like long nails, but when I have to perform it again, I'll have to grow it again.
Yeah, you have to get like a press-on nail or something that you can use with that.
Well, I know people put ping pong. They cut ping pong balls and they use that.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah.
That's creative. What are you looking for when you go to a new composer and you say, "I want you to write me a piece"? I mean, do you give them a wide berth, or do you have something in mind? I mean, this project, you had the idea, obviously, but tell us a little bit about that process of approaching a composer and then how it happens, how it comes to fruition.
That's a great question. I always am hesitant to ask for too much because I like to let the composers just be free. But I do sometimes I say, hey, just make it difficult or make it challenging, make it virtuosic. And sometimes I don't. I usually am familiar with the work of the composer, so I know what they're sort of, what I think is what they're best at. Yeah. So I had an idea when I asked some people. And then, for example, with Sophia Bass, she was really exploring Indian music. So she wanted to write in the Indian style, and I was delighted. You know, I didn't ask her for that.
You mentioned Sophia Bass, and I love the piece that she has on there. It also brings in those traditional classical Indian instruments like the tabla and the, what's the other one?
Tanpura.
Tanpura, yeah.
Tanpura, yeah.
I get that mixed up with Japanese tempura, you know, with the
Me too.
Similar to each other. One you eat, one you play, right? You don't want to mix.
Yeah, one is with an M, one is with an N.
Yeah. So this is like the percussion instrument and the string instrument. it has that immediate sense of we're in a different place when you play it. But traditionally in Indian classical music, there's a lot of improv. You know, they have different scales that they work from. How does this piece work? Is there improvisation involved?
Yes, I did write out my improv because I'm not a born improvisator. Improvisator. So I did. There's two places where I'm playing repeated pattern of 5 or so bars that I wrote. It wasn't easy. I also I took a lesson with an Indian cello player,
Oh,
so he helped me a little bit. So they do have modes. This one is written in Mixolydian. It's in C sharp Mixolydian, which is not like the easiest, I guess, scale to play on the cello because we're tuned basically our open string is C, not C sharp. So it makes everything half a tone higher, which you have to compensate with fingerings. But
yeah.
it worked really well. The percussionist is just incredible.
You,
A
you could
young,
always do a scordatura, you know, change your strings up a half step.
I did think about that actually, but it would put a lot of pressure on the instrument, which I didn't want to do. But
Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
I think a lot of people, casual listeners, don't realize the technique and the thought process that has to go in to, especially with new music, that you're the first person to ever play it, that goes into making it happen. Now, for instance, when you did the piece with Timo Andres, he's playing the piano with you.
Yes.
I mean, were you what was he telling you, giving you advice while you were practicing it, or how did that work with the composer
Yes.
right there?
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, he said certain, for example, let's say glisses he wanted more pronounced, or accents more pronounced or less pronounced. Some notes he wanted me to bring out more. Not always easy to understand without having the composer there. So
Yeah.
it's really fascinating how, yeah, it helps.
Well, I imagine that's one aspect of commissioning new pieces that you enjoy is having the other creative person there. You can talk to them. You know, you don't have
Yeah.
Beethoven sitting on your side to give you advice.
Yeah, we wish he was there, but yes.
Yeah. So this first volume also includes the opening track by Fernando Otero, right?
Yes.
Who has an Argentinian background. And I sense a lot of like tango going on in this piece as well. It's another one of those pieces that speaks to a different part of the world. Can you tell us a little bit about him and this particular piece?
Fernando is an Argentinian pianist and singer. He's sort of autodidact, so he learned it almost on his own. And I met him 20 years ago, and I played with him in a sort of a piazzolla quintet group with a bandoneon bass, him on piano, and a violinist. So we played in all kinds of kind of questionable places in the city, and less questionable too, a mix, but it was good old days. And then he won 2 Grammys after that. He won Grammys for a best Latin classical composition. I know it's strange subcategory, but he's super, super talented.
Yeah, and this is, I guess it was part of a cello concerto that he had already written for you.
Yeah, he wrote, this was basically the first really concerto that I've commissioned, and he wrote that 10 years ago. And it went through a few reiterations. I never performed it, and finally he changed it quite a bit. And then I think it works really nicely for the chamber group.
Yeah, it's string quartet with a double bass player, and there's a lot of interplay going on between you and the string quartet as well. It's really interesting to listen to, and then these idioms like jazz and tango, you know, find their way into it as well. Now, you recorded this with Brooklyn Writer, which I guess was one of the first groups that you worked with during the pandemic or coming out of the pandemic.
Yes, it was so nice to get that energy from another living human being next to me after so many months that nothing was happening. So it was really great, great fun. And they're awesome.
So what can you tell us about this upcoming volume? The second volume is coming out, I believe, maybe the 27th, I think. Of this.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Give us a little preview of what we can expect.
So let's see. I'm gonna open my thing. Yeah, so there's two pieces that are super, super fun and interesting. One by Avner Dorman, a fellow Israeli, and he wrote for cello and accordion. And then Angelica Negron wrote me a piece for cello and bandoneon and electronics. They're both super, super cool. Then Vijay Iyer is like he won the Genius Award, and he is genius. He's really I'm not throwing this out so easily, but this name out. But he's a jazz pianist, just phenomenal. So he wrote a piece for cello and piano, which I recorded with him. Then Chris Cerrone wrote a beautiful piece that's very minimalistic. And with Bouncing the Bow, that was super fun. And then Viet Cuong, which we already released that track. He wrote a fantastic piece for 8 cellos, which I recorded all parts.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. The combination of instruments and just the composers on your list are really, top-notch composers. I love to hear everything from these folks. As I understand it, you're writing a piece for one of these, right?
I am.
What's your composing background? You mentioned that your friend Bruce Wolosoff had given you some composing advice. What can you tell us about your venture into this composing arena?
It's not easy. I'm not even sure I should do it, but I liked I've worked on this for a while last summer, and then I let the piece just rest, and now I'm looking at it again. It's for 4 cellos, and it's tonal. It has a quote of a Gregorian chant, which I love. Guillaume de Machaut is just one of my favorite old composers. And I always thought Gregorian chant could sound so beautiful with cellos. So there's some Baroque there, but there's obviously it's new, but yeah, I haven't really composed except for some cadenzas for concertos in the past. So I'm a little insecure about this, but we'll see what happens.
Well, you still have some time, so
yes.
you can see how that goes. Well, we look forward to that. Now, these are a series of EPs. Are they for digital download only, or are they going to be on an album? How does that work? How do people find this stuff if they want it?
Right now it's on Spotify, I think iTunes and Amazon, all just digital. But it will be, when we finish with releasing the 4 volumes, we will have a physical CD as well.
Okay, well, that's great. I look forward to all of that. I understand you're getting back and you're doing some in-concert hall dates coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. So I'm playing the Anna Klein concerto with the St. Louis Symphony this September. And then I'm going to Germany to play it. And then, touring with the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. So a lot of great stuff.
Yeah. So how has the year been shaping up for you? 2021 so far?
It's a lot of things have accumulated from kind of backlogged from last year. So I'm really hoping that my international travel will not be disrupted. But I'm excited about this season. It's going to be great. I'm really, really excited about it.
Well, thank you so much for making some time. I assume you're in New York right now, yeah?
I'm actually in Connecticut until the end of August, but I live in New York. Yeah.
I saw photographs of your studio saying it was being renovated. So I was hoping you'd be in the construction and everything, but you're safely out of New York right now.
It will be too loud for us to speak if I was in my house right now.
Yeah. Cellist Inbal Segev, whose project is called 24-2020. That's with Aviv Records, right?
Yes.
Okay. We'll link to all that information on our website, also to your website and social media. Thanks so much for spending some time talking about this great music, and we look forward to the next installment coming out soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.